Hey everybody, I'm Alex,
I'm Ryan.
and this is another episode of Between Shelf and Screen.
Today we are reviewing the book Thief. The book Thief.
Yes.
Not the book called Thief. But okay, when am I gonna
Yeah,
stop with
you
this?
don't need to do all that.
No. I like over explaining everything. Yes. This
Hence a
is
podcast.
by, I shouldn't really know who
Markus
it's by.
Zusak.
Yeah. And first, we'll start with a little summary. You probably, I feel like, would be better at this. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay, yeah, on the spot.
Yeah.
It's a story about a little girl in Nazi Germany. It's through the lens of death, like the Grim Reaper. And she's growing up in Nazi Germany and figuring out her way. It's kind of like a coming of age story,
I was gonna say it kind of does have a touch of
Yeah.
coming to age,
except narrated by death and World War II.
right? But we do focus around.
Liesel. I said for the whole time, like, oh, that's Liesel.
He almost convinced me it was Lysol.
It sounds better. Liesel, like.
To be fair, whenever I read it, even though I knew I was wrong, I always read it as Leslie, so I wasn't much better.
Leslie.
But he almost convinced me it was Lysol, and I confirmed he was wrong.
I mean, in the comments, if anybody's gonna watch this episode, what did you think?
Yeah, how did you pronounce Liesel?
Comment section is just crickets.
It's kind of like weasel.
Yeah, like a little,
You ever think about it
little
like that?
weasel girl.
Coming of weasel. So.
So yeah, start with you. Overall thoughts.
Overall thoughts. Oh my gosh, where do I even start? I genuinely think this is a book that everyone needs to read in their life. 5 stars. It blew me out of the park.
Yes.
I absolutely love this book. We both read it before in high school. I watched the movie right after. I remember parts. I don't remember anything from the movie because I think I honestly probably fell asleep in class. But I loved the book when I first read it. I remembered a few parts, but that was so many years ago where I was still just so good. And I fell in love with it just over again. So I think this is a book that everyone should at least read at least once.
I'm in the same boat. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I don't know if I could place a certain book at the top as my favorite, but this is definitely a contender. I've never had a book just move me like this one. I finished it today, and she did too, and I was just I was in tears, and I was just like, "You're gonna cry."
No, I cried the first time, and I cried just as much this time.
I've never had a book that just hit me like a sledgehammer. It's so good. 5 out of 5 stars. Literally perfect. I honestly, I can't really think of a good critique.
Don't worry, I still can. So
You can?
we'll still have content.
I mean, I genuinely don't. I think it was for what he set out to do and what it was. It had me interested the whole time. The prose were excellent, very good, character based, kind of and even the narration through death. I feel like that would throw a lot of people off and make them disinterested. But at the same time, I thought it was perfect. And I actually watched somebody else that had a negative review about it, and her thing was she didn't I guess she's more like a plot reader, and she didn't like that death would spoil it for her. He does it. I think he says
Throughout
multiple
the
times.
book, yeah.
Yeah, he's just this will happen. He's I don't really like mysteries or anything like
Yeah,
that.
he brought it up once or twice of I know even though he spoiled all throughout, he only acknowledged it kind of once or twice.
Yeah, he's just I don't like mysteries.
Yeah, I want you to know, maybe it's to prepare you, or maybe it's just because I just want to say it now and whatever, and I don't I already know this information, so I might as well say it.
And but for me, and I feel exactly the same way that Death does. I'm not a plot reader. Mysteries don't. I'm not into the murder mystery thing. I don't like sitting there and wondering what's gonna happen. That's just not me. So I didn't mind that at all. I thought Death was a really interesting character to see that whole world through, and just his description of talking about the souls that he was reaping. It's a masterpiece. I loved it so much. It hit just as hard as it did on the reread, which is just crazy.
Yes, I will give it that. I will say though, I didn't like. Well, I liked Death as a narrator. I didn't like that he spoiled it. I feel like I would have absolutely just been crushed, like crumbled, if he, like if it would just played out how it was chronologically. I didn't like that writing choice. I'll be straight up. But this is kind of an example of like because of how good the characters were and how good just the overall story, even though it's not really a plot book, it still has a lot going on.
It's very fragmented.
Yeah.
It's a very fragmented way of telling a story.
Yeah. It was still like he just did everything else so beautifully that like I will still say that this is amazing and worth everything. Even though I didn't like that huge aspect of the book.
Yeah, and like I loved his prose because like it was simplistic yet it was like poetic, and it didn't throw in like it like Lovecraft will do. He'll throw in like 3 different $12 words in one sentence, and you're like looking up on the dictionary like what the hell is that word even?
But that's also from a different time. But
that's
like,
true.
Oh my gosh, The Road. We'll continue to keep dissing it like that of just like, oh, I want to be profound now, so I'll start throwing this all, and then the next sentence
he's just like look at my thesaurus.
Yeah.
What should I put?
It didn't feel forced.
Yeah, these prose were just well done. Like it drew me in. Like I love the description, and I just love Death and like his whole way of seeing the world. It's almost. I think a lot of times it's like third person limited because you're listening to Death talk about Liesel. You're listening to Death talk about Liesel experiencing those things, and like a lot of times you're not privy to what's going on in her head, but yet it just works out so perfectly because like. Yeah. You just have Death's assumptions and like the way he sees it.
I mean, he is a reader, which I think it is mentioned in the beginning of like he's reading the book thief's work.
Yeah.
And this is where he's getting this from. Like he's kind of a member of the audience, just like us.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting concept. I really liked the idea. I didn't necessarily like how it was executed, but we'll get later on. We'll get into the spoilers of what.
If you're anything like me, I'm not a plot reader, so like I just love character stuff, like anything to do with character work, and a linear plot like I enjoy, sure, and I can enjoy twists and turns and things that you couldn't see coming, but like I don't read for that. Like I like to read to explore concepts and characters, and that's why I love this so much. Like, so when he gave it away at the beginning, I mean, like, it's literally through his lens, like the lens of death. So you have this feeling already that, like, okay, well, people are gonna die, so it's not that big of a.
Yeah, and you get the idea from just the sound. Like, that's not a spoiler because it's set in a time where, like, there was a lot of death going on. Like, this is like World War II.
He wouldn't latch onto this girl if people didn't die around her. So it's like.
Right. So yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a really interesting way of putting this setting, and I really liked it overall. I feel like the majority of people can, even if you like more plot, like there's still just enough like surprises or like enough to keep you reeled in and to still get you emotional. Like even though it's spoiled, we both like bawled our eyes out.
Right.
And we've also read it before too, so like. It's just that good of a story. Right,
and it's historical fiction too. So like, if you're a fan of history or anything like that, they mention like fighting with the Russians, the Battle of Stalingrad.
And he did his research. Like he had a lot of like in the acknowledgments too. Like there were a lot of museums, and the area that like this book was set in, he like mentioned people that he discussed that had studied this area of Germany.
Yeah, I think when I was reading it over, what town is it near? It's like Munich.
Munich, yeah.
Yeah, it's near like a big town of Munich, and I knew that's where my grandparents like. I asked them about that because I remember when I went to Germany to like visit my cousins there, like where they lived was like near Munich and everything. And I talked to them about. I'm like, you ever been to Munich and everything? When I was reading this book way back in the day, like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they grew up they were in their very young childhood when World War II was happening. So they're like 6 or 7
Yeah.
when World War II was about, and they were in Germany.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah.
So it was pretty interesting because like I was always like they would tell me stories about it.
Yeah.
Like they said that like when there was bombing, like I think my grandpa said that when whatever the Allies were bombing overhead, he said he would like run up from the basement and try to like look at the planes and stuff because he's a dum dum.
Clearly. Wow. Yeah, I couldn't imagine, especially being a kid at that time. And it kind of touches in this book because you are with a German family, or following a German girl, and like you get a lot of just childhood innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we know as the audience just all the everything happening in the world and like how they are not in a good position and just
Yeah.
it's interesting to see like them not really understanding and just being told like, oh, you're supposed to follow this.
Yeah. Supposed to do this, supposed to do that. Like, should we get into spoilers?
Yeah, might as well. I think we got our piece of like just read this book.
Yeah.
Like, please, if you haven't already, and if you
Yeah.
have, I know it's required or like it's a book in a lot of schools like ours. It was.
Yeah, and I think I got like an option to read this one. It was like this one and another one. They're like, you get to pick what you want to read. And I was like, I'm like, I got like told the synopsis. I was like, that one.
Yeah.
Because it just sounds so cool, and it is that good.
Yeah, and that's like it also says a lot of when we were in high school enjoying this book, which not a lot
Yeah,
of
no, forced reading is it's very hard to get kids into that, and I just loved this book with all my heart.
Like we didn't have an option, our class didn't, and I still love this book. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's all I guess we'll say, and we'll get into spoilers now.
Yeah. So Rudy doing blackface and everything, I love that. I loved Rudy's
Why,
character.
you love that? Really?
Yeah. Well. This sounds so bad out of context if you haven't really read the book, but he does it in a way where he wants to be like Jesse
Owens.
Yeah, Jesse Owens.
You get like this is at the very beginning, and you get a taste of that childhood innocence before it goes into World War II. Because I think the start is like the start of Hitler's reign.
Yeah, it's like around 1939.
Yeah, so like they're not.
It's right about when World War II is about to begin.
Yeah, it hadn't started, but it was like right there. And this event was like talked about in the past too, because this was before Liesel got into town.
Right. And then Rudy is the kid she ends up being really good friends with, and he paints himself black, and he's like running on the track, and he just like obviously like it's blackface, so it's like it's offensive, but he's just a kid and he really wants to be like Jesse Owens.
Yeah, he thinks that this is like just what you would do. Like he's basically idolizing him, of saying like this is what I want to be when I grow up, so I'm gonna look like what I want to be, and it's just. And
it's so funny because his parents get upset, and they're like, "You can't do that," but not for the reason you think. He's like, "You can't do that because you should be proud of your Aryan blood and your blonde hair and your white skin." And then you read it, and you're like, "Oh,
yeah,
right, we're in Nazi Germany."
Yeah, and you get that like big contrast of like childlike innocence, and then the these like tough, very fascist ways of living your life. It's crazy. Yeah. And that's kind of, I would say, is like a big theme throughout the whole book of just contrasting both the like childlike innocence with these hard times. And I would say that Liesel is a foil, or Rudy is a foil to Liesel because he's more childlike and kind of stays more innocent throughout the whole book, while she, unfortunately, her brother dies at the very beginning on her way to her new like guardian's house because her mom can no longer take care of her.
Because she's a communist.
Yeah, and this was right at the beginning, and communists are all bad and all that.
Yeah.
And so she, was not only getting introduced to this new mom and father, but she lost her brother on the way.
And then her mom goes away.
Yeah, and then she never gets to see her mom again. So it's like completely just traumatizing.
Yeah.
And she's like 9 or something.
Yeah. Oh no, when she first starts out, I think it's like, is it 9? No, it is 9.
8 or 9.
Yeah.
And so like she's gone through a lot more, and she isn't like she understands the, I guess, more serious side of things and hardships, while just Rudy is, funny, innocent,
Yeah.
good-looking young boy.
And then he instantly is like just attracted to her
Yeah, and he's always trying to cheer her up
and like get a kiss from her
yeah.
and stuff. He's just like Rudy's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I think
Rudy's definitely my favorite.
he's definitely a fan favorite. Yeah,
Love him.
I like Rudy a lot. He was such a good addition, and again, like it helps that he was a foil, even though where they were similar in some parts, like just the way they took on this world was completely different.
Yeah.
So I would say that was like a main component, and another theme was like, I would say actively fighting, like this war that's going on, physical death, all of that kind of stuff. And like fighting with words, and how Hitler like never physically did anything and really wasn't all that strong, but because of the way he was able to convince people using his words, and just was very
Passionate and able
Yeah.
to, I guess, charismatic in a way.
yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. He
I don't even like calling him that.
no, yeah, not obviously not trying to
Yeah.
this is not a compliment, but it's just like how he was able to win
Yeah.
over the population at the time, and that is what makes a, like that's like one of the main components of like a cult leader, is like being charismatic. So like we're not trying to say this to be like, oh.
What a good fella.
Anyways, but because of that, like he used words, and that's like because obviously books are involved, all that, and like book burning.
Yeah,
like
I love how authors do that. Sorry. They always just insert themselves, and like the main characters always just loves to read.
Yeah. They had just that little piece of them, but I feel like it was important in this too, because Hitler was using his words to get his way, and he was also banning like certain words, burning books. Like he was really limiting people and just brainwashing them. Not trying to take responsibility away from other people that did horrible stuff in this too. Like they're still responsible, but there was just a lot of manipulation going around.
Yeah, and brainwashing and propaganda,
Yeah.
which it's a lot of things thrown around with that in this day and age. So it's kind of funny when you read like stuff like this, where it's like you see little inklings of like, I guess like things that happen in societies that like may turn people radical, and then like you hear about it in the news nowadays, and you're like, wow, like that actually happened. If that
Right.
makes sense, what I'm saying.
Like, I think I get what you're saying.
Like as time goes on, like these problems are still here.
Right. Like definitely not to the extent, but
Well, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
again kind of how like history, to a certain extent,
Still has an
repeats
effect to this
its-
day.
Oh yeah,
That's-
but it,
that's
like,
what I
repeats
meant more so.
itself, in certain levels, yeah. I mean that's, I feel like always going to be a thing, because there's always going to be the people that are trying to take control. Like it's so weird that that's, I guess, human nature to some extent, of like controlling, whether it's just how you live your own life, and then there's also people that try to control others, and it's, yeah.
We're not getting political though.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, love Rudy. And then honestly, second favorite. If you could count Death as a character himself, really love him.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I just love his interpretation. He's not like a scary Grim Reaper with a what's it called?
A scythe.
Yeah, a scythe.
Yeah.
He's like more so just a guy doing a job, and he actually the way he describes it and everything, like it seems like Death is like kind of like this figure of like peace in a way.
Yeah. What's the word? I feel like he just like used a certain word to describe that wasn't just like he wasn't in control of this. Basically, he was just
Yeah, he's just
transport, I guess.
And he doesn't like hate humans or anything.
Right.
Like he in a lot of ways loves them.
And he had a lot of good quotes, I would say. I really like
Very
the
quotable,
things
very quotable narrator.
I
get a tat of what he said multiple times. I don't annotate. She annotates.
Yeah. Yeah, there were some amazing ones.
Just the prose, like, I mean, like, it's just all due to his writing. His prose were awesome.
Yes, 100%. Oh yeah, there were a bunch of just quotable moments, but I feel like Death had the most because, I mean, he was this ever-seeing figure in some sense. So I had a lot more to say, but I don't know. I feel like it was a little bit cheesy of like it wasn't, because this isn't too common of them to make like Death the nice guy and all that, but it is a little cheesy in my opinion. But it gets by. It's not cringy, I guess.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was, and like I think he did it pretty well too. Like he seemed like the way he interpreted a lot of things and his description seemed foreign enough, and it wasn't like it didn't feel unnatural.
Yeah, and Death was.
He's kind of funny sometimes.
Oh yeah. And Death wasn't, even though he was our narrator, sometimes he just didn't add anything for like certain chapters. He was just storytelling. Like he didn't add any of his own personal comments. Right. And then there were chapters that were like all about that. And I think it was a good balance.
Death really liked Rudy.
Yeah.
Because
how could you not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ending. Oh
my gosh.
Bro.
Let's not get there yet. Okay. I think we've kind of talked about Rudy and
how we love him.
Well, yeah. And Leslie.
Liesel.
Let's just say different L names this whole episode.
Lucelli. Lucelli Liesel.
Liesel Louie. Lulu.
Lulu.
Anyways, so if we'll just refer to Liesel as
Liesel.
any L name.
Yes.
I think we should get into then her parents or her
Hans
guardians.
and Rosa.
Yeah. So,
Love
who do you
them
want to
too.
talk to about first?
Let's do Rosa.
Yeah, I think she makes a stronger impression.
Yeah, especially when they start out.
Yeah, in the beginning, she's not the most favorable, I would say.
Yeah, I love her.
Well,
I mean,
you liked her from the beginning. I did not.
Yeah, because she's funny. Like she's just mean. She's grouchy.
Oh, that's why you're always mean to me. You think you're being funny.
Yeah.
You're not.
I am. But anywho, Rosa. I mean, I just like her. She's just like a tough love sort of mom.
Yeah.
And like she makes that impression off her first. I just love the way Death puts it at the very beginning. It's just like she has a unique way of getting underneath everybody's skin and annoying everyone. And then also, she really loves Liesel. She just doesn't show it.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. She chooses specific words.
Yeah.
That are not common. Yeah. Can you pronounce any of them?
Samanch and then Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut.
I can't wait.
Sauerkraut.
I hope someone corrects you.
Sauerkraut. I don't know. A lot of German curse words. Sandwich. Oh my god. I feel like you pronouncing Spanish words right now.
See what I mean?
Sandwich. But yeah, she's awesome. And like she grows on you. Like there's one scene that I was talking to you about earlier where Hans goes away at a certain point. It has to go.
Yeah, later on in the book.
Yeah, he gets drafted. And then he leaves, and then Liesel sees Rosa in her bedroom, like holding the accordion and just like holding it till she falls asleep. It's really a sweet scene.
Yeah, and
I guess it makes you a little bit emotional.
Oh, 100%. Because also context. Hans plays the accordion.
Yeah.
She's not just like, oh wow, this one instrument I really love.
Yeah.
So she's thinking of her husband, but like, it's just, it's so, you can really see that side of her.
Yeah.
Which you don't get a lot. She has a very strong and loud exterior.
Yeah.
And she isn't very emotional. So like, seeing that and like already working through more than half the book and like not knowing if Hans is going to return from the war and like all that, you get emotional with her. It's just the way that he writes it and the way that he constructed this character of like, she's so hard, and then the scenes that you do get of her being compassionate or...
It's well done.
It yeah, it just makes you feel so much stronger.
Yeah, and then it makes you
towards
love her.
that. Yeah. Oh,
Then you
100%.
end up loving Rosa.
Yeah, she is just
And then Hans, you just love off the bat.
Hans is. Well, I don't understand why more people don't talk about this.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't understand why more people don't talk about this book. Period. Especially with the whole sad girl trend going on.
Yeah.
Like, this is right up your alley, girls.
Yeah.
Like, girlfriend, I'm trying to get to you.
Girly pop.
But like anyone that just loves the sad genre, I guess something that'll make you cry. I get it.
That
I
is
love it.
my genre.
Right.
Like
I want to feel something.
Yeah, no, I read books and I watch movies to cry. Literally, I'm not even joking.
No,
If it can make me cry, I'm like, I love it.
It's so satisfying in such a weird way, but
yeah, it reminds you that you can feel.
Wow.
It's like I'm a human being that like has a little heart.
It's like somewhere.
I'm so edgy. No, but I love it, and like Hans, you just love straight off the bat.
Yeah.
He's just like a teddy bear.
He is.
He's just a big, lovable dude who just loves Liesel.
He is genuinely like one of just the best characters out there. Period. I don't know why. Like everyone has their book character that they love and whatever. Not that like he's not a book boyfriend because I don't. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, he's old.
To say that, but like genuinely, he is the best person out there. He's just so incredibly.
He's like Gandalf,
and,
except if he were like a father figure.
Right. Well, I don't know because I haven't seen it. I don't want to.
Gandalf's just a wise wizard, you know.
I got you.
But then he's wise, but he's a kind, loving father.
And not a wizard. Was he a wizard in the book?
He was.
I can't. Hans is.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that part.
Yep. Wizard.
Okay. So this is also a wizard tale.
Yeah, it's a fantasy book.
Yeah. And it has like 8 books in the series.
Yep.
Yeah.
Isn't that so annoying, by the way? I want to know what the people think about this in the comment section, you know, all 2 of you. I want to know if you get annoyed by this too when you pick up one fantasy book and then you're just like, wow, that was really good, and then you look it up and it's an 8-book series.
Yeah. Like,
Isn't
love
that
these
really
standalone books. Like,
yeah.
I get more satisfaction out
Same.
of these.
I'm not committing to 8,000 pages of stuff.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that.
I like how we got on this topic.
Yeah. It just makes me so mad. Like, why can't they just have a good standalone fantasy book? And then why did, like, even the book You, like, that was clearly just meant to be a book, and then they're like,
You're still heated from that.
I know, it's just so stupid. Like,
it is genuine. That was such a good standalone.
Yeah.
I would say they're starting to come out with more standalone fantasies. I've seen a few. Piranesi's one.
I want to read it. Cause
oh my god, it's so good.
That's my main deterrent away from, like, fantasy. Like, I've read, like, maybe a couple. And then, like, the one that I did read was, like, the first Witcher book. Because everybody raved about it. I read that one. I was like, wow, it's cool. I'm like, how many books? It's like 6. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, as someone with a big book, like, I'm scared of big books and I'm scared of long series. I do not dabble into it too much.
Yeah, and you know, I say this, and I like one of I think my all-time favorite is either Book Thief or it's the book It by Stephen King. And that's a chonker. I like that didn't scare me away, but yeah,
that
like
scares me.
Yeah, but yeah, I look at a series of like 8 books, and I'm like, jeez.
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't even. I'm just already behind.
Yeah.
It gives me anxiety because I feel like I'm late.
Yeah, I don't care what universe I'm in. I'm not spending all that time in a universe.
I do. I feel like. I think maybe this is just an us thing of like it's very plot heavy or like universe you're in rather than characters because there's way too many characters.
Right.
To like keep track of. I want to know like what's going on, and that's why I wish we could talk about Piranesi. I guess. Well, I already am because I have to. It's my duty apparently, but. Like, I wish there was an adaptation just so we could review it in further detail.
Yeah, I'm going to read it here soon.
Good. And you don't get that overwhelming, like, amount of characters that you get in normal fantasies.
I think it's just a taste thing that me and you just so happen to have. We like our standalones. Yeah. And, like, you know, I'll dabble in the literary fiction because they're usually just standalones. Right. I'm so annoyed with series. Everything has to be a series. It's so annoying.
get that.
Anyways, we'll get back to the book thief.
I guess
a good
whatever.
standalone book.
But Hans is like top. I mean, top
S tier.
10 best characters. Period.
Yep,
And
love
not
him.
enough people talk about him. Like he is just so selfless.
Yeah,
And
he's kind of like if you ever watched
oh god,
Avatar: The Last Airbender, he's kind of like Uncle Iroh.
I really wish I
You
understood.
gotta just watch it.
I never understand anything that you ever reference. And I'm just like, yeah.
Like, yeah. Mention The
I'll
Last
just
of
nod
Us,
around.
Avatar.
Yeah. The Walking Dead. Except I
Yeah,
get that.
well, yeah.
Finally, we can talk about something.
We'll talk about, yeah. Honestly, we should just do a podcast dedicated to The Walking Dead one day, just because, like, I have a lot to say. I have so much to say.
I would love that. Oh my god. I would go episode by episode. I'd go minute by minute. I could talk about everything that ever happens.
I have so much to say about that series.
I do too. Oh, I get it. I get it. That's the one thing that I can finally, like,
Yeah.
not just nod to and be like, yeah.
Let me tell you something, man. Do you know the memes with Shane? Let me tell you something, man.
This is just an us thing. I feel like everyone listening is going to be like, God,
Shane's
damn.
always trying to tell somebody something.
You'll be like, this came out years ago. It's done. Like,
Let me tell you
even
something, man. Pardon me?
Shane's gone, man. This
Man, you know
over.
what the hell you're talking about? Daryl. Always flinging his arms around. He's got his knife like this.
You look like a video game character.
That's how he is. He's like... And they swinging his arms like this. I'm
We get
surprised.
it though. That's just a Georgia thing. We get it.
It honestly kind of is.
We walk around the streets like that. Okay, we're so far off.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Germany.
Right.
That's exactly where we want to be
Yes.
right now. So, Hans,
I feel like we've covered him.
you said like 5 actual sentences about him.
Plays the
He, like-
accordion, wise old man, father figure, loves Lisa.
Yeah, he's the guardian figure, but he's still very flawed, which like I
Yeah.
appreciate. It's not
Yeah, he's
just
like-
this perfect.
like Rosa's, yeah, that's why like
Everyone's
Rosa,
flawed, and it's awesome.
yeah, like Rosa's always like up in his business. There's been like, oh, you know, I do everything for this family, but then you realize it's kind of valid because he's out of work. He's a painter by trade, and he can't get business. So then he just
And
kind of sits at
he-
home.
And like with the previous war that he was in, the Great War, he like just skated by. Like he was
Yeah.
good enough where people weren't getting onto him.
Right.
He shot well enough and whatever, but he was not trying to be at the front of the battle. He didn't want
Right.
to fight. Period. And
Yeah, like he was.
he was trying every way to get out of like the war.
Yeah, so
So he wasn't like that kind of guy. Like, he didn't give it his all.
right. I would say, like from my experience in the military, he wasn't a shitbag, but he skated, which everybody kind of tries to do anyway. So he did his job. He satisfied all the requirements, but he's not going to be the one to jump up and be like, "Send me,"
Right.
and then everybody can kind of respect that guy.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%. And I feel like everyone, well, not everyone did because of the decisions he made, and he was
Right.
very like headstrong with his morals. He did not just back down, and he didn't. It was weird because he didn't obviously stand up because there was a certain line. You know, he wasn't going to get his whole family killed or sent away, but he what initially got people to kind of like shun him and disrespect him
Was they didn't
was
try
the
to join them?
pain-
Oh, never mind.
Well, oh yeah, no, you're right. He didn't try to first join the Nazi party because he didn't agree with their beliefs, and then he painted over the slurs
Right. Yeah.
on the Jewish businesses, and then people thought that was disrespecting because you know
how
everything
Nazis
going
be.
on. So, but he just stuck with it as best he could, and there were points where he had to go along and he had to teach Lucy all to protect herself first, but this we're not gonna
We don't agree to these values.
and know what is actually right and how to treat humans and equality and just that, which then
And
kind of gets
he
into
believes that because he was saved by Max's father, which we'll get to Max later, but Max's father, who was a Jewish man, and he saved him in World War One.
Yeah. Well, I think this is kind of like also just him in general. Like he really always had a just baseline, saw everyone as equals. He wasn't a very judgmental type of person, but he thought like he wasn't just going to go with the crowd with everything going on in Nazi Germany because he was like, well,
I was
how
saved
can
by
they be
I was saved by
bad?
a Jewish man.
Yeah, how could they be bad when like I owe my life to a Jewish man? And this thing gets into he promised or he I guess offered his help for any reason to the wife of the man that saved him, and she had a little boy, and this was like after the Great War, and then when this World War II comes around later, it was not
Crystal,
at the
the
very
night of
beginning.
Crystal Nacht. Is that what it is?
Is that it? I think you're right. Your
think it's Crystal
pronunciation's,
Nacht.
I bet, on point.
Crystal Nacht.
But we
Shattered glass. Yeah. Anyways. I don't know anything. I'm American.
Yeah, we are uncultured.
Yeah.
But when like later, after probably 2 years of like Nazi Germany, that favor kind of is like, what's the word I'm looking for? Renewed.
Mm-hmm.
And we are introduced to Max.
She's like,
who
take
is the
my son.
Yeah.
The
And
wife
he's
says, take
like
my son because they're rounding
25
up all the
at this
Jews.
point.
Yeah. So the Gestapo comes and gets his mom, and they're hiding, and then he eventually finds his way to Hans and Rosa.
Mm-hmm.
And Death doesn't really touch on it, but it seemed like Rosa was not totally on board.
You think I like disagree. I think she was just more concerned.
Yeah. It's
but
not that she was just like, oh, Jew, ew. No, like that wasn't her thing.
Yeah, she was
just more
always-
so like, this is dangerous. But then Hans basically was just like, listen, it's like I'm not gonna give up on this because a promise is a promise.
I feel like she was very understanding of that too, because
Yeah, she
this
was.
was like the time where I feel like that could have completely ended, and like someone would have like turned in their husband over this kind of thing. So like she had to have some sort of understanding before and like agreed, which probably also led to them getting married, like why they got married. Of they just were in line with that kind of belief.
Right, they're on the same page.
Which like you do, I feel like you do kind of think that she's going to be a bit harsher, because up until that point she was always hard on Liesel, and like you thought, well, how is she going to take this? And like immediately you start to see this other side of her being
Where she's like, okay, she's like motherly. She just wants to care.
Yeah.
And then they instantly kind of take a liking to Max.
Oh, yeah.
And Max is just, he's another great character. Like, they're all really just good characters. Flawed to the core, but great.
Yeah. He had just like a lot of interesting outlooks on things,
Because he wasn't just like this beaten down, just like victim. Like, he was like the Jewish fist fighter. Like, he loved to
that's how
fight.
it's referred to.
Yeah, and he constantly thought about like
Physically taking down.
Yeah, Hitler and stuff like that.
And he was like, he kind of became a storyteller in a sense.
Yep.
Especially when
He had to fill up his time.
Well, yeah, and especially when like getting to know Liesel, he like found out like her interest in books and all that, and he wanted to like share his experience, and this is like obviously one of the best sources. I mean, even now, like because of like the survivors, there were so few, like their outlooks on all this like is so valued. And I think this was like kind of showing this aspect of like you are getting firsthand knowledge of the struggle and everything going on.
Right.
And so he became like a storyteller, not just of his struggles, but just like his life. And he constructed it in a way that was just very interesting.
Yeah.
And I really liked the stories that were told.
He was writing to get by. That's what I saw it as. He was just,
Well, I saw it as like he was one of the interesting parts was how he actually ended up getting to Hans. Is he was given the Mein Kampf
Yeah.
book to hide the key to Hans's apartment or house, and he was carrying that on the train to also kind of pass as German.
Right.
And he ended up, once he got there, he just like took out every page and was painting over it. And I saw that as a claiming
Yeah.
the words and storytelling. And again, that goes into the concept of how Hitler used his words to
Take over a nation.
yes, and was not an actual fighter. And Max was starting to go into that. He was finding a way to use these words. And in one of his dream-like states where he was like seeing himself fight Hitler, he even mentioned how like he was finally getting the one up on Hitler. And the second that Hitler like went down, first of all, they were in like a boxing ring setup, and then when Hitler went down, of course they didn't count because he can't lose. And the audience, like, no one was cheering because
Yeah, they were never cheering for him.
yeah. And then Hitler just stands up and he takes off his gloves, and everyone thinks, oh, is he like giving up? That's like, how are we seeing this? And then he starts just using his words to fight, and then somehow Max loses.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like such an interesting just way to describe how
Like his
it was
situation.
yeah.
Like there was no way out for Max.
Yeah.
He was just in it, and he was suffering.
And how much more powerful the words were in the society than the actual war. Not trying to say that obviously a lot of bad things happen from the war, but the words and
you can
the
gain
speeches,
power from words.
yes. And so I
You can
thought that
change
was an
minds from words.
interesting outlook that this book provided, that not a lot of that's mentioned, I feel like.
Yeah, there was definitely a run along theme.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this when you were talking about this for a little bit. I'm not sure if you probably do know this, but like Hitler obviously was Austrian.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm talking about real life history facts, but there's like a legend that goes like obviously he was an Austrian. He was fighting in World War One.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I don't know which front he was on. It was either against the French or the Russians, had to have been. But he says there's like a soldier that wrote down in there. He said he saw Hitler, and then like he could have taken the shot, but he didn't for whatever reason. And there's also another legend that like Hitler was like in the trenches and they were getting an artillery bombardment, and he said this voice in his head was like telling him to turn right and go left and stuff. Spooky.
Yeah.
Just little things like that. Just crazy.
How like kind of like the domino effect or like the butterfly effect of just the tiniest thing that could have totally changed history. And even like I think I don't know if this is fully true, don't quote me on this, but I did see somewhere where like he almost drowned and like someone saved him. If that adult wasn't there to save him, like he would have drowned as a kid.
Yeah.
And
I'm also a firm believer though that if he didn't make it, then there would have been somebody else.
oh yeah, unfortunately,
it was just the situation that Germany was in.
Yeah, there was already just a lot of anti-Semitism, and he just took control.
Anyways, we'll get back to the book.
So, all right, let's get into the mayor's wife, who was an important role figure throughout the book as well. She was introduced later on, and just as like someone who never said a word, was always in a bathrobe for whatever reason, when Lisa would drop off or pick up the laundry that Rosa would do.
And they get paid for it.
Yeah, and they didn't do it for free.
Yeah.
It was, in fact, charged. But then after the book burning that had happened, the mayor's wife had saw Lizzle picking up a book from the like leftover rubble, and then like the next time she went over by herself to pick up laundry, showed her whole collection, books in her library, and they're
Yeah.
like huge mansion, which altogether was just like
Yeah, I'm like jealous on many levels.
right. And I'm
Especially
sure,
the book collection.
and Liesel absolutely was.
Yeah,
So
rightfully so.
you just reading those parts, you were just like the little kid.
Yeah, I'm
I
just
was
like, let me in that library.
let me touch every single book.
Yep.
And like not actually read them because still kind of don't know how, but
Yeah, like books are just like a good decoration. They're not even like good for
right.
reading.
I really like the part where they're like all turned backwards. That's my favorite book.
Yes.
Is the pages. But Liesel, this is like when we're first kind of introduced to her as more than just this strange woman, and they. What did you think of her at first? I guess.
She's just kind of like, I guess your standard wife archetype. You know, just kind of keeping her head down.
You know what that's like?
Yeah, because I got one.
How many? You
Like
can
4.
be honest. Okay, yeah. I'm not gonna trust his opinions. So.
But am I wrong?
Now she like definitely presented as like the woman that
Like dutiful woman.
she didn't say anything at first, and then whenever she said stuff, it was just kind of like remarks. I don't know. She clearly didn't feel the need to discuss.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a lot of it for some awkward scenes. But basically this became a very comfortable place, and Liesel was very excited whenever she had to go to their house to pick up or drop off laundry.
Yeah, she'd read a little bit of the books each time.
And she just had, like, she was surrounded. Like, this was her safekeeping, I guess.
Her escape, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good way to put it. And then when they finally fire Rosa, Liesel, like, stands up for her and, like, calls the wife out, the mayor's wife, because she had lost her son, and to just remind her and to constantly keep her suffering, I guess, as just a defense mechanism or just like a reminder. She kept open a window to like let the cold air seep in, and it to always just be a little bit uncomfortable in that room because her son unfortunately died freezing to death after getting stuck on a fence, I think. And Liesel said some pretty like
mean things.
Yeah, about that, saying like you're just letting yourself that control you and all that, which then kind of later leads into Liesel doesn't stop visiting the mayor, but instead she's sneaking through that open window and is stealing books. And the mayor's wife catches on pretty quickly because you would notice when
your book's being gone.
Yeah. And they
She starts leaving cookies up there for her.
Yeah, they kind of had this relationship because first she leaves cookies, then she leaves a dictionary right at the front, so like kind of showing Liesel towards like what she should get, and like she invited her back into the house so she wouldn't have to sneak through the window. But
and then she keeps sneaking in.
Yeah, she's like trying to take control over this as just her angsty teenager mind.
Yeah, and she just really hates her.
Yeah, she was, after that, she just held that against them because they're also rich. And they were trying to say, like, well, we don't think it's fair that we can still afford these luxuries when other people are struggling, even though you need to pay, like, you...
It's not so black and white.
Yeah, and Liesel's family is struggling, and this was their only income left. And you're saying, like, well, we don't want to show this. Like, you're supporting someone, and you're just... So... Liesel was very mad about that.
Yeah, rightfully so. And but then like it's not like obviously like I think he kind of writes it in a way at the beginning where you're meant to just kind of hate this family anyway, because like us the readers know that like he's a mayor in Nazi Germany, so obviously he's drinking the juice. Yeah. And then you think the whole family is too, including the wife, and you think she's just irredeemable. She's just this snobby sort of like fascist woman that lives in this house, and just like people are just bowing to her and she's getting whatever she wants. And like that's how she's presented at first. But then you're slowly kind of learning these things about her. And even as like that when Liesel was blowing up on her, she didn't retaliate. She didn't like say anything back even. She just
Yeah.
kind of like nodded, kind of cried, and then went back inside.
Yeah. She was very polite about it, and even when like Lisa was stealing from her, like she left cookies. She just wanted her to feel more comfortable again. And this the last occasion where she snuck in to steal was right after um, Max had been. I guess we kind of didn't cover, but unfortunately, Hans was sent off to war after a mistake with feeding bread to the marching Jews going to a
Yeah.
concentration camp. And this later on, there were still continuous marches going through their town. And later on, Max, who was later
In their
released,
basement,
yeah, because they didn't want to put him at risk after this incident with Hans. He ended up getting caught, and Liesel like tried to stand up. She was holding his hand, following him, and ended up getting whipped for this, for being like a Jew lover, in their words. And after this, she just kind of blew up. She was tired of the world that she was living in, tired of seeing this
I
struggle.
think you're getting the timeline mixed up.
Really?
Because
I thought this
Liesel blows up on her at the very beginning.
Oh no, I didn't mean blows up on the mayor. I just meant like she
Oh,
was
okay,
struggling.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she sneaks in. Okay.
Yeah, this was at the very
Sneaks in,
after,
writes a note, and then
yeah.
tears up a book, and then writes a note apologizing.
Right. Well, it was I think like a really interesting contrast because Lisa blew up on the mayor's wife for making herself suffer after all this time and never getting past it, but as Liesel describes, like sitting in this environment, she's like losing grasp of herself, and she like wants to be by these books because it's what she loves. It's one of the only things she still has are words, but it's also what's destroying the country and what's killing people, and how Max described is like hurting him, and she is using these words to hurt herself, and she like ends up tearing up the books because it's making her so upset, and she's like destroying the one thing she's loved. She's making herself suffer, just as like the mayor's wife ended up making herself suffer with this breeze coming through, making her always uncomfortable. Like it ended up looping back around, which I thought was really creative of the author. Of it really isn't black and white, and that's kind of how they Liesel and the mayor's wife ended up making a bond again, because she saw like, hey, I guess I get where it's not that easy in life growing up.
And that seems to be sort of a reoccurring theme throughout the whole book, like making yourself suffer needlessly. Like Rudy, that's just his character archetype as a whole. He's got a smart mouth, and like he's got like very rigid ways of how he thinks, and he suffers as a result of that. Like he doesn't make life easy for himself because he's getting these bullies in school that are making him like in Hitler Youth that are just like, you know, they're giving him easy outs, and he stands up for like the half deaf kid. So then he gets punished when he tries to.
Mm-hmm.
Keeps happening, and then he gets beat up bad by like the bullies.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, but like he doesn't concede to the bullies or anything. He like stands tall this whole time, and like he just kind of makes his life harder for himself.
Yeah,
because he's a stubborn kid. And then you got Hans, who like has his beliefs, and
he knows it was like not going to benefit him by like.
Yet he couldn't help himself, especially when he like gave bread to the one Jewish guy.
Yeah.
In the crowd.
Yeah,
and
like he's literally housing a Jewish person in his basement, which is putting everyone at risk.
Yep, and then there's, Liesel with the whole thing with the mayor's wife, and then there's Rosa, who, her struggle is kind of, she can't be vulnerable, she can't be, sentimental, so then she's making her life harder by showing her love by just berating people with words.
Right. And that's where you like really learn to just love these characters.
Yeah.
It's so complex, and it was so well done.
Yeah.
It was genuinely impressive.
And I guess we should probably get into the end now.
Yeah. So then, which is spoiled to some extent throughout.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
death of like, oh, they're not gonna make it, or this is gonna happen, or Liesel's gonna be the last one standing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he wasn't lying.
Yeah, and it all comes to a head. She goes down in the basement because she starts writing, and then Hans.
After the mayor's wife actually gets her into writing by giving her a journal and says like, if you're not gonna read anymore, like let it all out through words. Like don't act like me. Don't make yourself struggle.
Yeah.
And she really takes a tune to this and spends a lot of time in the basement again as her now comfort space, because
That's where Max and her would hang out.
and where her papa would read to her, and just she has a lot of memories down there, and that was how she was recollecting these thoughts to then write the book Thief.
Yeah.
Is what she called her story.
Very meta.
That's true. Kind of cringe. Just kidding. It was sweet because that's what everyone called her.
Yeah.
But
and then she's down there. She's writing in the wee hours of the night, and then bombs come in and they just wipe out all of Himmel Street and kill basically everyone she knows, and it's so devastating. Like
everyone on her street.
Yeah, and it just
They
feels
were all
so
just
real.
Yeah, it was. It just felt like wrong. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was,
it was
so
so
sad.
sad.
And then like she finally kisses Rudy when he's dead.
yeah.
And then that part gutted me. And then there's Hans, and she kept his accordion. And then it just
There were just certain scenes with like everyone that you just realized how important all these, or not, you knew how important these characters were, but it really just grabbed your heart and twisted it.
Yeah, it wrecked. I literally, like, this is the only book that's ever made me like sob. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And then so moving on past that. So then what is it? Alex Steiner, Rudy's brother, comes back from the war, and then like,
No, that was the father.
was it the father?
Yeah, that was his father. Because his father he got in trouble because he wouldn't let his son to the...
I thought that it was his brother.
No, because of...
Oh, okay, never mind.
I think... Oh, shoot. Now you're tripping
Pause. I'll pause. Let's...
Yeah.
Not literally pause, but yeah, I'm going to look at it.
But I'm pretty sure it was his dad, because the parents are responsible to allowing Rudy to go to the school they wanted
I thought
him.
basically his brother
and they
just...
stood up.
Or I thought his brother basically just, like, gave himself as tribute, kind of like Hunger Games.
No, because it's not like because it wasn't like a definite thing. They just said, no, we're not sending him. And then he got a mail.
You're right.
Yeah, a letter in the mail saying, oh, by the way, you're also drafted.
They also mentioned a bunch of Steiner characters that I get confused with.
He had like 5 siblings.
Yeah, so
So.
checks out. But yeah, he ends up coming back and then basically takes Liesel underneath his wing. So it has kind of like a happy ending. Alex has her working in a shop, and then when all is said and done, she reunites with Max. And Max, ironically, is the only one that lives that Liesel knows.
Well,
It's
also,
so
she
sad.
stayed with the mayor and the
Right.
mayor's wife.
Yeah,
They
she stayed for a little bit, right?
No, I think they adopted her.
Did I miss that?
Well, they took her in. Remember, she was
Yeah,
at the police, and then they were like, we heard there was a girl, and she was... I thought she lived with them. They didn't really clarify that to be fair.
Okay, yeah, because I don't think that... I thought she just stayed there for a little bit, and then they said that, like, she basically got taken into the police department to figure out, like, what to do with her.
Right, but they never... I thought that was just the confirmation, because it's not like Alex could really afford to...
Right.
So I think it
Right,
was...
because his whole home was destroyed, too. Oh, it's so devastating. It really... Oh.
I could not imagine coming back from the war. I mean, they discharged him because of that, what had happened, but, like, I could not imagine coming back and your whole family was bombed and killed.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm like, what do you do? I'm surprised he stayed in the town. because
Yeah.
it would be way too hard for me.
Yeah. And then, but like it was happy. It was like kind of a cathartic, bittersweet
Yeah.
sort of conclusion when you figured out that Max lived, and then they reunited after the war was said and done.
Yeah.
That was kind of nice. And then I liked the conclusion with death finally coming for Liesel way in the future when she's
Yeah.
living in like Sydney, Australia.
Yeah, we know she had like a good life. Like she married, had kids. She had a full life.
Yeah. And then like I love the line where like he said that, or Death said that when he came for Hans, his soul stood upright and ready. And he's like, that's how all good people usually receive him. And she said that Liesel did the same.
Yeah,
It was really sweet.
It was not like, I don't know. I like the sad endings. So like it would have still been an amazing book if it just kind of let off at the end. I like the conclusion. I didn't really care to see the like very end part, but I did like that touch.
I liked it. I thought it was.
I didn't need it. It wasn't necessary in
I
my
needed
opinion.
I needed it.
I could sit and just cry. You know, it was whatever.
There
But-
needed to be some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, because then
I
like
get-
you know,
I
like if
would-
she's the only one that lives and then it just ends, it's like, okay, well that just, it's like, okay, so that's the end of the book thief story. Like she's what, 14 and everybody she knows is dead, and then that's it.
See, I wouldn't have minded it though, because it's just like that was not an easy time, and
Well,
you're
yeah.
not like
But like
Not-
it shows
there
like
weren't
obviously
happy
she
endings
lives and
like
something
that.
else happens, so like we
Right.
can time skip and just know that she's
right.
okay.
Well, that's the nice part about like fiction is you can get the happy ending, I guess.
Yeah.
But I like a little bit of like just to like tug even more at your heartstrings of like not a lot of people got their happy ending, so like you're not gonna get it either in this book. Like I choose books that will
Right.
purposely, but that's just a me thing.
I just love because you could tell. I think even what was it the author said at the end of the book is like Rudy's my favorite. It's like I was my favorite character to write. I loved Rudy, and then you could see it in Death's sort of narration where he's just like all the time whenever he comes up to Rudy, he's just like
He deserves
he's just
better.
yeah, it's just like God, I love this boy.
Yeah. Yeah, you could tell he put a lot of. I mean, he put effort into all his characters. He did really well with them, but
Yeah.
you could see kind of just a little bit more in Rudy.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And then that's what makes his death so much more of a gut punch, especially when Liesel kisses him at the end. You're just like,
Especially because you knew, like, in her mind, she was thinking
she
before
wanted to.
that. Yeah.
She wanted to, but she couldn't
was
because it's
scared.
probably a little bit of Rosa rubbing off on her.
But she was like, I mean, she was still a teenager. They were
Right. Yeah.
still teenagers, and she was scared, nervous,
Yeah.
and
She kind of had that same relationship with Rudy that Hans had with Rosa, where like they kind of like they would insult each other, but then they care for each other a lot.
yeah. Yeah.
But
And it was weird to get, like, obviously you don't really get romantic with that. So then
Yeah,
she
I mean
is
you
like,
can't really do like.
well,
much.
yeah, but she was thinking, like, I wish Rudy would kiss me. And now,
Yeah.
of all the times, like, Rudy talked about it as, like, when they were growing up of, like, do I get that kiss now? Now he's not doing it, and you're just like, come on. Like, this is your
Yeah.
time, Rudy. And then it doesn't happen until
He
the very
dies.
end.
Rip.
He never gets, yeah. And, like, I think even Death mentioned, like, you could see how much they, like, truly loved each other. And not necessarily in that way, but just as, like, friends.
Yeah,
Like,
just like
they
two people
cared
who
about each
yeah.
other. And it was just devastating.
Yeah, it definitely just twisted the knife that much more.
Yeah.
And like it's so funny because
It is funny, really?
the way yeah, it's hilarious. Now the way they prepare, like Death literally spoils the book and like
Yeah.
tells you like I think even like within the first 100 pages, basically
Yeah.
that Rudy's not gonna get his kiss until he's dead.
Yes, multiple
Yeah,
times.
and then it's and if
hate
it,
that.
I loved it because it kind of prepared me, but even as it prepared me, it didn't prepare me.
Right. You definitely still get upset over it, but I wish, like, I don't know. I want to know how it would have felt of, like, going in without these spoilers and, like, getting to that part. Like, it would have just hurt more, and I want that. I don't know. Like, I really didn't like that part.
It wrecked me. It wrecked me enough.
It's still devastating. Like, I'll give it that, but I really didn't like that part about the book, even though I still gave it 5 stars, because I don't think it's so hard to make a book perfect, genuinely.
And I think if you were to
But
take out those points, then it wouldn't be the same. Just one. It was just a perfect
really,
experience for me. Yeah, 10 out of 10
yeah,
experience. Wouldn't change anything.
yeah.
Loved that book to death.
I feel like I feel like every book has its flaws and or has something because as I said, like it's really hard to make a perfect book, but that doesn't mean like that makes it not 5 stars.
Yeah.
Um, so like still well worth it. You will still cry. Oh my gosh.
It hurt.
We
It hurt a
we
lot.
loved this book. Um,
Yeah. I don't think we can say anything else.
right.
That's been the review. It was
Yeah.
amazing. Go read this book if you haven't.
Yeah. Please. Well, I don't know if they'll make it to the end if they haven't.
They might. There's some weirdos out there.
We always mention that.
And there's
but-
always just like, I don't know, like 14 viewers. So maybe like one out of the 14 will be like, oh, I got to pause this.
That's now at the very end. They're wrapping it up. I finally feel prepared. You still won't be. You'll cry.
Yeah.
But yes, let us know what you thought about this book. If you had to read it for school, I'm interested
Yeah.
in that. If other people did, but yeah, that's our thoughts. Tune in next week where we'll be covering the movie.
Yep.
Who knows? I don't remember what I thought about the movie, and you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
So-
it's just got some big shoes to fill. Probably won't like it that much. So
Well,
we'll see.
keep your bias. Like, come on, stay on a neutral level.
Nope.
We are unbiased people here.
Nope.
It's totally not our opinions.
Nope.
We'll tune in next week. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.